The new book, Strategy That Works, from Harvard Press, talks about how to close that gap between strategy and successful results. Some of the best companies in the world consistently leap ahead of their competitors using the tactics that are outlined in this book. Author Paul Leinwand is here to give us some insight into that. Paul, in the book, we're talking really about something I think a lot of business owners think about. It's strategy and execution. There's a huge gap on how to make these two connect. And I know you have like 5 things that people, a lot of companies that you have worked with, that you can kind of zone in on what they do to kind of close that gap.
Right. In fact, strategy and execution are often thought about as very different activities. Strategy, we pull together our view of where we're going to go, and then execution is what we do every day. What we learned, from the 14 companies in the book, companies like Apple and Amazon, IKEA, Natura, Danaher, and others, is that these are topics that have to be brought together. We almost shouldn't be closing the gap. We should be eliminating the gap. When we're developing strategy, we should be asking the tough questions like, do we have a right to win? Do we have the right capabilities needed to execute the strategy? When we're executing the strategy, when we're putting in new IT systems and making major investments, we should be asking the question, are these investments actually supporting the few things we have to do better than anybody else?
And what I found really interesting is you talk a lot about being committed to what you do best instead of kind of chasing so many different opportunities. What does that really mean to a business?
Well, right, and this was the first act of unconventional leadership, whereas most companies are pursuing growth, and that sounds like the right thing to do. Most companies need to grow. The companies in our book actually said growth should be an outcome. It shouldn't be the strategy. Instead, what we should focus on is our advantage, the few things we can do better than anyone else, some of our capabilities that we bring to the market that creates products and services. Apple makes a good example here, just to make this tangible. Apple, we always hear about the genius of Apple and all the great insights, but part of that genius was building some incredible capabilities like the way they design products. They've been hiring designers from fashion companies for over a decade. They have a chief design officer. They think about their designers influencing everything the company does. They've developed new processes for design, including how to prototype things very quickly. And so Apple actually has a tremendous advantage in its design that has been built over a decade. And so when we see success, we're always asking ourselves the question, is there a capability behind that success? And almost inevitably, we find those capabilities.
Well, how is it that we decide what it is that we do best, that's kind of our shiny thing that we should be focusing on, and know that this is the strategy that we should go with?
Right, and this kind of gets us to the second act, which was about translating the strategy to the everyday. Most companies, they are building capabilities. Most companies build many capabilities, and the functional leaders sort of believe that they have to be great at everything, following benchmarks, following best-in-class processes. The problem is that it's very hard to be great at everything. These companies say, we're going to pick a few things. We're going to put a lot of money behind them. We're going to think about blueprinting them. How will that capability work? We're going to think about bringing functions together to really achieve our strategic agenda. And that's a big difference from functional priorities and building everything as great as we possibly can to picking a few things that are going to be incredibly important for our business.
And I know we're talking a lot about strategy and how to get to that execution, but how do you know if maybe the strategy that you're doing right now, you just need to give it some more time to maybe see if it comes to fruition, or it's time to make a different change in that strategy?
That's a great question, and certainly we're sitting in a pretty concerning environment right now with, in a recent study, over 50% of senior executives saying they don't have a winning strategy, and 2 out of 3 executives say even if they like their strategy, they don't have the capabilities needed to execute it. We have to start asking some of the fundamental questions of strategy in our businesses. Do we have unique capabilities? Do we have a clear statement of the value we're creating for our customers? Sometimes our strategies are great, and indeed, we need more patience, we need more focus to execute that strategy. But often, the strategies themselves have been designed market back, understanding great opportunities. We didn't always consider whether we had the capabilities, whether we could execute the strategy. And in that case, I think the strategy does need to be reconsidered.
Well, Paul, people are definitely saying that this is a real behind-the-scenes look into what makes these companies so successful. I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk to us more about it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Stay where you are. We'll be right back.